I think we're ready to go. All right. Okay, well, we're going to get started. Welcome, one and all. We're so glad to have you back. I think many of you, if not all of you, have joined in earlier sessions this week. So thank you so much for spending your evenings with us in such an intense way. We really appreciate it. My name, for those of you who don't know me, which I think is most of you, because I'm rather new to CEBE, is Roberta Hill. I'm an aquatic ecologist by trade, and I'm a grower of food by inclination. And I am a co-leader of CEBE's climate action team with my youth counterpart, Jess Cooper, who you all were with last night, and she did a fabulous job leading the youth panel. And I also am on CEBE's Board of Stewards, and I just welcome you all. Thank you, Chandra. So onward, next slide, please. We want to start with acknowledging and thanking our sponsors who not only support CEBE financially, but also are our partners in this important work that we're doing. And to just list them off for you all to hear their names: W.J. Wheeler Insurance, Pleasant Hill Property Services, Garbo Kane Integrated Solar Builders, Power Market, West Coast Maine, Revision Energy, Maine Passive House, the Natural Resource Council of Maine, Sierra Club is a great partner, Black Dog Timberworks, and the Union of Concerned Scientists. And many of these names, not all of them, of course, but many of them you recognize as local businesses who are really all doing their part to contribute to this effort that we're all taking part in. Next slide, please. So the land we now call Maine has been lovingly cared for, nurtured, listened to, learned from, and honored by the Wabanaki people since the glaciers of the last ice age receded from the land we now call Maine, 16,000 to 12,000 years ago. For the last mere few hundred of those many millennia, through the process of settler colonialism, genocide, theft, forced indoctrination, patriarchy, racism, and discrimination have all been systematically and violently perpetrated against those who have by far the best and longest, who have by far best and longest loved this land. The mindset that thought to destroy a people and a flourishing, earth-honoring culture is the same mindset that has now brought modern civilization to a state of climate emergency and the brink of cataclysmic ecological collapse. I regret that I do not have any straightforward proposal to make for you this evening to get all of this right, but I do know without question that we will never make either of these great failures right until we make both of them right. And this means that all of us who care about the climate must also work with the same urgency to understand the legacy of colonialism that lives on here in Maine. And that means asking ourselves some questions such as, what are the privileges that we each enjoy today because of this history? What are we doing individually in our workplaces, our churches, in our organizations we support, in our climate activism? We can go to the next slide, Michael, I should have said, I'm sorry. In the organizations we support, in our climate action, in our activism to address the injustices of this history. What might we be doing intentionally or not that helps perpetrate the settler colonial mindset and the violence and trauma it imposes upon people and our planet? How can we work to ensure that peoples whose territory we are living on today are centered at the discussions and envisionings of Maine's current and future aspirations? How can we each live our own lives to disrupt and dismantle the destructive extractivist inequitable systems that we have been taught to believe are inevitable, even when history and our very instincts for survival are telling us that they are not. And so I'd like to just take a moment at the onset here so that we can sit with these questions and breathe them in a few times together fully. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to place some links in the chat so we can all continue to explore these questions, and we can also support Wabanaki-led initiatives, and together we can all start finding the answers to these questions. So I will do that right now. And while I'm doing that, Scott is going to take it away and tell you a bit, give you a bit of the background on our evening tonight, and basically orient you to CEBE's mission and so on. So take it away, Scott.
Thanks, Roberta. That was really beautiful. Yeah, I mentioned it to some of you the other night, but I've had the honor to work with some Wabanaki leaders on the Maine food convergence. And I think that there's a groundswell of support for the Wabanaki people building right now. And CEBE is hoping this Indigenous Peoples Day actually to do our permaculture gathering along with some Wabanaki folks and build some bridges. That was one of our tracks there. So I really appreciate that. I'm not going to take a lot of time, but I just want to talk about our mission. And if I had to title this, it would be The Tale of Two Missions. So this was our original mission that we developed for CEBE. Back in 2013, we'll be 8 years old on Earth Day. And this, if anybody's ever done a mission statement before, there's a lot of editing and just hand-wringing over every word. But this is where we were coming from in 2013. Some of us had done a transition town training. If you're familiar with the transition movement and Rob Hopkins, we had a New England transition person come and do a big training with us here in Norway, and lots of people showed up for. So our mission at that point was to engage our community. No easy task right there. And developing practical ecological solutions in the areas of food, shelter, energy, and transport, which it was clear to us that all of our current systems of our food system, the way we house ourselves, our energy system, the way we move ourselves around, we're all completely, just so reliant on fossil fuels, so inefficient, so destructive and extractive. Really, every bit of that was pretty much running on some sort of extractive, mostly on fossil fuels. So we thought that we would engage the community to develop practical solutions. So sustainable food systems, sustainable agriculture, organic agriculture, building passive solar, groovy buildings with local materials. We would transition to clean energy and build a transportation system that ran on clean energy, that had public transportation, and bicycles and electric cars were just starting to be a thing then. And so we had all this vision of, if we just basically made the case that climate change was upon us and was looming, and the science was clear, that here were some solutions, and we would demonstrate these solutions, develop them in our community, and off we would go. And then so our goal there, obviously, local community sustainability, health. Carl Costanzi said, whatever you do, put health in your mission, because you'll get more grant funding. But we really did mean it. I mean, if anybody that spends any time in downtown Norway, it's not a healthy place to be during rush hour. A lot of our homes aren't healthy, our transportation system, et cetera. And then we knew that we needed to build resilience, because we knew climate change was coming. The weather was going to get weirder and weirder, and that we needed to build resilience. We also knew that these bigger systems of energy, shelter, food, and transport were all going to break down eventually. And at the time, we really, that last word there, we were building resilience in response to climate instability and resource depletion. I think we had the idea, and John Howe, some of you might know, was a peak oil guy. He was like one of the real nationally known peak oil scientists, activists, whatever. And we really thought that oil, and we saw it happening right after we launched CEBE. We saw the price of fossil fuels start to spike. Gas was $4.50 a gallon there at one point. We were like, aha, it's happening. Peak oil is going to save us. We're going to have to transition because this stuff is all going to get so expensive. And then something else happened. Oil got cheap again. And a lot of that reasoning went out the door, and we realized that we really did have to make the case for the ecology because peak oil was not going to save us. So we went along, and we when we launched CEBE, we did a Indiegogo campaign. We raised $30,000, mostly from strangers that believed in our mission. We really just we went crazy trying to promote this campaign, and a few people stepped up. Half of that was from 2 people, but we raised all this money, and we launched 4 projects, one in each of our working groups. One was the community bike share that a lot of you are probably familiar with. We ran that for 5 or 6 years. We didn't run it last year because of COVID. We've had varying levels of success for that, but we've had hundreds of people sign up and use those bikes around town. Obviously never really caught on as a primary transportation. Our shelter working group, we built a greenhouse with some middle schoolers up at Roberts Farm. And already you can start to see that things are crossing over. Our working groups are very interwoven. So, shelter and food, pretty clear. We need to be growing our food where we live. Energy and transportation, obviously, highly intertwined here. Our energy working group put up solar panels at the community garden because there was no power over there, and we put up an off-grid solar system so they could use power tools and power a few, it's an irrigation. We built a solar-powered irrigation. The food working group at that time, we were going to build a kitchen in the co-op, and that project really never got traction. It just became more and more complicated. So what we ended up doing, our food working group, our first big project was the food forest at the Allendale Community Garden, which was a really, really exciting project. And it's just starting to bear fruit now. And we just got a fence around there. And I think we'll see a lot of traction on that in the next couple of years in terms of getting an understory. We've had so many deer in there, we haven't been able to do that. So anyway, we had these projects in all of our working groups. We had to put together an amazing board. We had a whole bunch of advisors. We have an advisory board with like some PhDs and engineers, and just we had a lot of expertise behind us. And it seemed like, if we just built awareness around climate change and showed all these alternatives and demonstrated them, that things would move right along. And in some ways it has. I mean, we've seen, like, we started putting in electric charging infrastructure in the area. We got some good grant funding around that, and all of a sudden we probably have more electric cars per capita than any other rural community in the state at this point. And that's because we demonstrated almost everybody involved in CEBE at this point drives an electric car. So we saw that some of these projects would get traction, but when we started, we knew the science, we could see it coming, but we never really understood it as an emergency in the way that we do now. So let's go to the next. I just want to share a couple of slides with you that are this kind of blew my mind when I saw this. So one day, friends of ours were getting ready to leave town, and it was shortly after we launched CEBE. So that would have been 2013, 2014. It's probably, I think it might have been 2013. So our friends were moving away, and somehow one of them became a member of the Weary Club, and they had their going away party at the Weary Club, and was in there one night, and I'm like, oh, look at that cool photograph. It's like a reversed photograph of a drawing of Norway Lake. And then I realized this is the ice out data from 1864 to the present. And I started looking May, April, May, April, May, April, and I got to the end. And at the time, it was probably just 2012 was the last date on there. And I saw this, like, it looked like somebody was kind of freaked out. And I started looking, I was like, March 23rd, that lake melted. And I looked back, and it had melted 4 other times in March, and it had all been in the last 10 years. And that was just like really shocking to me. So I made this graph. I've never made a graph in my life. Mike, show the graph. This is like a little Excel spreadsheet graph. And that's where the ice out of Norway Lake is heading. If the red line is just the straight line, but the orange line shows like how early it was getting, way back a long time ago in the early part of the 20th century. And then this is the Industrial Revolution. We were putting all this CO2 into the atmosphere, and then it sort of balanced out for a while. And this is when I kind of grew up, and my parents grew up, so nobody really saw this coming because the Earth was cooling while we were simultaneously warming it. But now we're going back into a warming cycle, and we're putting so much CO2 in the atmosphere. And you can see how warm our winters are getting here in our local community, and our whole winter economy, our skiing economy, the snowmobiling, ice fishing, all that stuff, our way of life here will probably not be our way of life by 2050. So this really hit me really hard. I'm a skier. I'm like a hardcore skier. And this just really, I don't know, of all the things I've read and all the things I've seen about climate change and all the talks I've been to, and it's like this really hit home hard for me. So, we've worked really hard, and we've done a lot of projects. We've probably held hundreds of workshops. We've taught permaculture. We've done a permaculture designers course. We've done forestry workshops, Don McLean's favorite, the electric chainsaw shootout. We've done EV and solar expos. We've taken hundreds of people on test drives in electric vehicles. We've worked with the local food council on the Foothills Food Festival to really start talking about local food. And one of the things that we do a lot is connect food system with climate, because the food system is responsible for about 1/3 of our greenhouse gases. It's also extremely vulnerable to climate change, to global warming, to climate weirding, to extreme weather. And it has the capacity to sequester carbon, to be part of the solution. And if of all the parts of our economy, food probably has the greatest opportunity to become a really serious emitter to a serious sequester of carbon. So yeah, this is serious. So it's an emergency. So just recently, in the last couple of years, I think it's been a little over 2 years now, we've joined a lot of statewide work. We've met a lot of other climate activists around the state. We started working with a lot of youth activists, and you met some of them last night. And it's been kind of life-changing, earth-shattering for all of us, I think, to see that the youth are coming at this from a different angle. It's not solving the climate crisis isn't a technological problem. It's really more of a social problem, and it's intersectional. It's tied to racism. It's tied to economic disparity. And we're seeing all of those things get worse as we're seeing the climate get worse. And we're starting to realize now that without social, economic, and racial justice, we're never going to have climate justice. We're never going to, if we can't solve those problems, we're never going to get to the root of climate change. And we're realizing that the solutions, we have to put equity first and foremost. So this has all been in the last couple of years. I think it really came to a head at the 2020 Vision on Convergence last year. The youth panel Felipe's talk, Anya's talk. The youth speak truth to power in a way that we didn't really understand as an organization. So we've had Shannon Brenner's come on our board, Anna Heath. We've had Jess Cooper come in as our youth coordinator, and we've really so we're shifting our gears as an organization. I think we're starting to grow up, and so we worked on a new mission this year. So let's take a look at our new mission. So this is just off our website. So our new mission is to engage the community again, but instead of practical ecological solutions now, we need to address the climate emergency. And we've really taken to doing a lot more organizing, direct action. Some of you have seen us in the streets in Norway. We've had big rallies. We've been part of other big rallies. 2020 Vision was a movement building moment. And we've also started to do a lot more educational work. And Seal Rosignol, one of our founders, took a hiatus for a while, and she's been back for the last couple of years, working on education, and especially in the school system, working with kids, working with nature-based education, building sense of place in kids, because we're realizing that this is a cultural change that has to take place. It's not, if we just teach the science and show the solutions, it's gonna work. We also need to take direct action. We need to get in the streets. We need to get in the faces. We saw this happen when the youth showed up in Augusta 2 years ago, when Janet Mills was first governor, and there were some solar bills, and they showed up in force, hundreds of youth in front of the State House up there, and they got noticed, and things are changing. Just today, the Pine Tree Amendment was got through committee, ought to pass 9-3 or something like that. And this is youth-driven stuff. This is their future. They have the moral authority. So we've really shifted to that, to supporting the youth, to getting behind the youth. So we educate, we take direct action, and still implement practical ecological solutions for a just transition. And if we just can't make like a transition to this regenerative economy, it's got to be justice first and foremost. So the people that have done the least to cause the climate crisis are typically the ones that are suffering the most, the frontline communities, youth, people of color, people experiencing homelessness, poverty. So we have to lift everybody up in this transition, so it has to be just. And we don't think this is about surviving. We really have a vision. Katie Branch talked about it last night. It's like, we really can envision a thriving regenerative economy that has opportunity for everybody and solves all problems at once. And I think, this is a great moment. We're seeing just a tipping point in how things are shaping up. And if you look at what's happening in Washington, some of the people that Joe Biden just appointed to his cabinet, where climate is front and center all the way through, I think, 75% of Americans now realize that climate is an issue. So we've gone from being, resisting and, fighting and, swimming upstream, sailing into the wind, whatever analogy you want to use, to, I think we've got the wind at our back a little bit. We've got so much to do, so much work to do, more important than ever, but I think there's hope starting to show on the horizon. So this is our new mission, and we'd love for everyone to roll up their sleeves and work with us on it. So I will leave it at that.
This might be a good time to launch the poll, Scott. So because we are going to be breaking into working groups next.
Poll here, yeah. So hopefully people have seen our videos. All of our awesome working group chairs made videos, and we're just kind of curious if people have gotten to see them. So just click on whichever ones you've seen. Maybe nobody's seen any of them.
That's okay. we have a chance
Well,
to share them.
I know some of you have, because does everybody see this poll?
I can see it.
No votes. So, okay, your job. So probably in our working group breakouts, we're going to share the videos and
Yep.
people can watch them, because they do really flesh out what each working group is working on right now. Clearly,
Okay,
these folks don't go on Facebook. All right.
Great job, Scott. So
Thanks.
thank you. And I'm just going to explain how the working group breakout sessions are going to go, and so that we don't get too lost. If you ever get lost, you can just make your way back into the main room. But basically, we're going to have 2 rounds of breakout rooms. Both rounds are going to be 20 minutes each. And it's kind of open house style. So once we say it's time to go to your breakout room, you're not going to be put into a breakout room as you usually are on Zoom. You're going to need to go down to the bottom of your screen with your cursor and look for the icon with the 4 windows, basically, which is the breakout rooms, and click on that, where you will see the list of the breakout rooms. And even though we have 6 working groups, we have 5 breakout rooms, because energy and transport, as Scott said, have so much in common, so many overlapping projects, that they have decided to meet together. He was going to lead this discussion, but you can highlight both of us. We can be a tag team on that.
I thought you were going to lead the discussion, Roberta. No, I'm
oh yeah,
kidding.
Okay. I guess no worries. We'll do
I
that.
just want to hear what happened. We had a
I do too.
great conversation in shelter, but I want to hear from the other.
So why don't we just start with the questions, like what were these new ideas or discussions? What kind of taught you, or what inspired you from your conversations in the breakout rooms? And anybody, I think how we'll do that, is it okay? Can we raise hands physically, or you can use the little, or just anybody just chime in?
We've only got 20 people. Let's just unmute and let it rip. If you got something that you
it
just
sounds
got
good to me. Let's
excited
put it on
about,
gallery. Put it on gallery, everybody.
yeah, put it on gallery and let's have a little conversation here.
Okay, so I guess just anybody want to start off with something they
Glenn, were you raising your hand or adjusting your screen?
I was sitting in my gallery view, but I'll be happy to speak first if it's okay.
Jump right in.
Please.
I'm going to join a meeting on the 24th for the action group. And I'm really excited to hear that that's happening, because I missed everything else this evening with regard to that group. But I was happy to spend some time with the food working group. And we shared a lot of ideas. It was really good. I'm looking forward to more of that.
Very cool.
Who wants to go next? Anybody else?
Style. Who got inspired about something or heard something? Seal.
I had Tony Ferreira in my group, and I met him last year at 2020 Vision. He came to my education working group meeting, and he's from Brooksville. And he was telling me about this awesome thing that is happening this weekend that he did reach out to Jess Cooper about, but I didn't know about it. They're running the intergenerational climate conversation this Saturday. So a bunch of elders and youth coming together. And I think that's really inspiring. And so
that's beautiful. Tony, is it going to be like live streamed, or can people participate in any way, or listen, or are you doing it physically?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Absolutely.
Its registration is required. And we capped off at 70 people already. So we're really not accepting any more except young people.
Yep, absolutely.
I did write to Jessica, and if any of the people we saw on the panel yesterday were interested in just participating, they would be eligible to participate. So it's very exciting, and let's see what happens.
Well, we would love to hear more about it. So I hope you'll come back and share with us how it went, for those of us who aren't able to join. And Mike Newsom, doesn't this sound like a potential good idea for our we started batting around an idea for an action. Why don't, Mike, would you like to share that? I mean, we just were going to brainstorm it in our next action team group, but I love Tony's idea.
You do it. I'm half into bed already. I'm so tired.
Okay, so and we just started thinking. So our action group, we work together on actions when we've all got together on Citizens Climate Lobby. Many of us helped with the 2020 Vision Convergence last year, but we often work independently. Like a few of us are working on the Pine Tree Amendment. Some of us are working on divestment of the main employment, the main PERS. What is it, Mike? What is main PERS? It's the government employees. That's what it's called, retirement fund. So anyway, and then we come together and we share these actions. So Mike had the idea of, we really should develop an action all of our own, but it should involve young people and it should involve Indigenous people. And how could we start building that action? And I think the conversation is the place to start. And I love your idea, Tony. So that's really inspiring. And I think we will try to start bouncing that around and seeing if we can make something similar happen. So I would be very interested to know how your session goes, and if you have any words of wisdom to impart after you've gone through it to help us develop our idea.
And part of it would be videoed, I guess, the large group before we go into the breakout.
Great.
So that should be available, and I'd be happy to send you the questions we're going to use.
That'd be lovely. I don't know, you probably have CEBE's mailing address at least.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
No.
So just if you send them to CEBE, attention Roberta, could you do that? And that way I make sure I see them too.
Okay. Yes.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. Well, super. I just got a great idea. I'm popcorning up. Great idea. Thank you. We have another question too. So you can either answer the one that we've just asked, or you could also answer this one. And that is, what is CEBE missing? What could we be working on that we're not? And because this is completely a community enterprise, totally. So you are the community. We are all part of this community. So what are we missing? So anyway, that's another question. But if you'd rather popcorn style up on the first question, please do.
Well, I'd like to suggest that CEBE collaborate more with the faith communities. I think there is a great untapped area, and that requires a lot of education, but
that's a great suggestion, Sally. So this conversation doesn't need to be limited. Maybe we could actually have a series of conversations.
There's a book called Revolutionary Love, written by Rabbi Michael Lerner. And I have used that in every organization that I've been attending to for the last 2 years, because it posits the first order of business, which is kindness and listening and ways of empathizing and understanding people to bridge various differences. And I learned from our youth last night about how important it is to think about ourselves as intersectional. And so I haven't left any groups out of my thinking. I think the religious organizations can be most effective, but I also like the garden clubs and the business organizations in particular, if they are willing to hear and speak kindly.
Is there a chapter of Interfaith Power and Light here in Maine?
Yes. There is, as far as I know, yeah. I
think it's pretty inactive right now. Last I heard, they needed to apply for 501c3 status?
It's called Interfaith Power and Light.
And
Yes.
light. Yeah.
Yep.
The
There,
pastor of our
it's a
UU
nation-
church used to be involved in that pretty heavily.
The benefit of reviving that is that there are all kinds of national resources available,
yeah,
like money.
yeah.
My
So what they
husband,
need is, what they need, as I understand, is like volunteer power to handle just that organizational bit of housekeeping is to maintain their 501c3 status. They need like a new breath of life to be breathed into them. The kind of energy CB has, they had some momentum 10, 20 years ago, and it's been sort of depleted.
Mm.
So they
Right.
need, yeah.
I'm running into that.
my
Many of-
husband and I used to be on the board of Interfaith Power and Light
A lot
many
of
years
people
ago.
used to do stuff with them, right? And
Yeah.
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 Hey, Chandra's got her hand up. What's up, Chandra?
Sorry, I'm chewing ice. I know this is kind of off topic of what you guys are just talking about, but I'd like to know what's going on a little more about the transportation through CB, because I know there was a group about it, but I didn't get to chime in on that.
Ted. Unmute, Ted. Unmute.
Good. Well, first thing is we're going to meet next week on Monday and love to have you join us. We'll be meeting virtually at 6 p.m. because I won't touch much on tonight, but you heard a little, or maybe you didn't hear from Scott earlier because he might not have been here. CEBE's been active for quite a while, setting up EV chargers and bike share and things like that. We're looking at doing improving the pedestrian and bicycle access around Norway. We're looking at keeping going with the bike share system, improving our charging systems around town and around the community. And we're just basically looking, how else can we have transportation and have the environment be as clean as possible? So that's a quick nutshell, but love to have you join us. If you can email me, I'll be happy to send you the Zoom link. The Zoom link is, my email is ted@beachhillbison.com. And that's beach like a tree. I'm in Waterford. If you can't get a hold of that, then go through a CB and be happy to help you.
Yeah, Chandra, if you remind, just send an email to CB. We can hook you up if you want to hear about more about the transportation group. We just,
Yeah.
Sally and I were just talking about in the shelter group, talking about public transportation too. And it's something that is a huge issue here in the state. I was mentioning a fun fact that Vermont spends $12 per capita on public transportation every year, and Maine spends about $1. So we could go a long way towards reducing the amount of vehicles on the road by getting some public transport going, so people that don't want to drive don't have to and get around our communities.
Could I mention something about transportation that was successful here in Bridgeton? We have a shuttle bus that runs from Bridgeton to Portland and back. And it stops in Naples and Casco and Wyndham. And it runs daily. And this is it has been a great help to some people. And this was an effort that really paid off. And now the participating towns support it. So it is possible for a person living in Bridgeton or any one of those communities in between to get to Portland at a very reduced price on a regular schedule. It runs a few times a day. But it's this kind of thing that I would think would work between towns, shuttle buses for people like me who would rather not drive, and So I just hope that there's more. By 2030, I hope we have a much better public transportation system.
Sally, is there a place on the buses for people to put their bikes? So if they biked down
Yes.
to that's
Yes.
awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
And how is it it's fully funded through the towns and just user fees?
Well, it's I think senior citizens, it's $2 and it's $3 for other people one way.
That,
It
It's
is
funded
not
through
possible.
RTP,
Through who?
Regional Transportation Provider, RTP. I don't know. That's the abbreviated acronym anyways. It's volunteer drivers. But yeah, they make very little on the user fees. Like Sally was saying, it's very inexpensive fare. But so they must have other funding, obviously.
But right as Scott pointed out, we could fund that.
Let's face it, every transportation system needs subsidies, you know?
If gasoline was paying its true cost on the environment and that money was put towards public transportation, it would pay for itself.
How about we take the
Subsidizing.
subsidies away from the fossil fuel companies? Just take those subsidies away.
Amen.
Pay for all public transportation for now until forever with those subsidies. I'd love to see one that went from Norway up over the mountain down into Buckfield and then over to maybe Turner and then into Auburn and Lewiston. I think that would be awesome, especially if you could put your bike on it.
Maybe we can get the
We
bike
see a
on
bus.
loop.
We see a bus at near our house in Brunswick every morning that's called Western Maine Transportation. And we thought Western Maine, I wonder if that comes and goes out of Norway, South Paris area. And if it does, it must go through Lewiston, Auburn. Does anybody know about that bus?
It's
We just
called Western Maine
Western Maine
Transportation.
Yeah.
There's a bus and it comes to People Plus Community Center every morning at 7:15. And we see people getting on it. Presumably they're commuting to work in Lewiston or something. But I mean, it's there every day. I don't know anything more about it. We haven't ever.
I believe it does go from Norway all the way up through. I used to know someone that took it, so.
and
so
folks in Bethel have been working on the Portland Montreal train system for years and years, and that goes right through South Paris. I'm not sure whether folks in Norway, South Paris have been involved in that effort as well.
Well, we've had Tony Donovan come present at CEBE a couple times about that his dream of getting that train moving again.
All the towns, so many of the towns in Maine used to be connected by train.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting close to the end.
Yeah.
Did you have some closing remarks, Scott?
Somebody just had their hand up. Linda had her hand up. No,
Oh, sorry.
I thought who?
Again, just for a moment, many nonprofits are having trouble with governance these days. They don't know what governance is and how to run a nonprofit. Maine Association of Nonprofits can be helpful. I would be happy to talk with folks about governance if they know someone who's having trouble. Just putting that out there.
No, you can come talk
Thank
to our
you.
board sometime.
Thank you, Glenn.
Welcome.
Awesome.
Yeah,
and,
so-
and Heidi has her hand up, but I don't.
Heidi, yeah,
I was just wondering if we could go through a really quick recap of what the groups were, because I really don't know enough about what you guys do
Videos.
as an organization, or if you would
yes.
We've got
want
just the
to
thing for
hang
you.
with me afterward to fill me in too, so that so that people who want to go can go.
So
I
Heidi,
don't want to hold your meeting up.
Heidi,
and I'd
go
love to
on our
hear what you
Facebook.
guys are doing.
Heidi, go on our Facebook feed, and there's a video that every one of our working group chairs made these really lovely videos to describe what goes on in the working groups. We have food, shelter, energy, transport, action, climate direct action, and education. So you can learn all about them on these awesome little videos and share them widely.
And is there like I'm thinking about the shelter, and just
Yep.
because I have a lot of friends in the homeless, or not homeless, unhoused community. And also the energy, and I guess the climate action.
They're all there.
They're all
Do you-
there.
Well, I'm wondering if those from the meetings tonight have new news from that.
Well, it's 8 o'clock and we're gonna let all these fine people
Okay,
go do what they need to do, but check out the videos, and if you have questions, just ask
Okay.
us. And I just want to make one correction from the other night, when I was talking about Power Market, and if people haven't signed up and changed their electricity over to Power Market, you're missing your chance. Well, actually, you're not missing your chance, but there's no reason not to do it. But I told everybody to put CEBE in the referral code. And you don't want to put CEBE in the referral code. You want to put us in the promo code, and you'll save 10% on your electricity, and CEBE will get a lovely donation from Power Market. And if you're just getting the CMP standard offer, you're losing out, and you're supporting all that nasty hydropower and other fracking stuff. And you can get solar power and save some money and help CEBE, but make sure you put CEBE in the promo code. Just go to the Power Market website. I just wanted to clarify that because we've had a little confusion going on. So
I'm going to piggyback on Renee's recent jumping on Power Market, so that she gets a little kickback too. So I'm going to.
yeah, and then then you can use the referral code from your friends that just did it, and it's like, whew, it's like one of those pyramid schemes, but it's really good.
But it's a good one.
So, yeah.
Well, nice to see you all. Thank you all.
Come tomorrow night.
coming.
We're going to have Dr.
Is
Cassandra
there a
Rose coming.
Is there a
Um,
link on Facebook on that?
On the
Yeah,
website, on the
there is
CB
on our
website.
Facebook feed, on our website. If you just go to powermarket.com, you can find it. But tomorrow night, we have Dr. Cassandra Rose from the Maine Climate Council and the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and the Future coming to talk about Maine's Maine Won't Wait, Maine's Climate Action Plan, which is one of the most bold and awesome in the country. She's going to talk about that. And then we have, why can I never remember his last name? Renee, help me.
David Costello.
David Costello from NRCM is going to talk about a lot of the bills, the climate bills that are up in front of the legislature now, and how you can advocate for those bills. And then we're going to have a discussion about that, and maybe a few breakout rooms so people can chat and meet some more people, social hour. And that's our final night, but it should be really good. Spread the word, because our climate action plan is awesome, but it's just a plan, and it's going to take all of us to make it so. So see you tomorrow night.